Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to episode 24 of Wilbur Talks FPL, where we talk everything the Premier League and FPL in general. We are back. Season is finished, but we're back for a season review. We've got a full complement tonight, and I'm joined by Sam and Charlie. Again, how are you both doing?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, very good, thanks.
Good stuff. Full complement. It feels like we've been together for a while, as I was just saying before we started the pod. So it'd be good to get everyone's thoughts as we conclude the season and actually get a summer that's quite quiet. Well, probably for a few months, because I know the Premier League season starts quite quick again at early August. So it'll be here in no time, but a nice summer to enjoy. So I think we'll just jump straight into it, guys, and get your thoughts on what was a pretty epic last day of the season. I tried to avoid the results and do a match of the day challenge. It never worked. I ended up down the pub watching every game on like a different screen, which was just absolute chaos. But I'll start with you, Charlie. How did you find the last day of the season? I'll go to Sam after because he might have been a bit more involved than us, shall we say?
Well, in a way, it was quite nice. I was fairly confident that, or whichever way you want to look at it, I wasn't expecting Arsenal to be able to be in with a shout of any top four, even though in theory it was possible. So I was quite relaxed going into it, to be honest. I was more interested in the title race than anything else. So from an Arsenal's perspective, yeah, it was even though it's 5 goals scored, it was against an Everton team that had already were safe, so they were kind of, their heads were gone anyway. They weren't really there. Yeah, so pretty much, yeah, was very interested watching the scenes unfolding at both Anfield and at the Etihad.
Yeah, and even down at the foot of the table as well with Leeds and Burnley is quite exciting. Well, it was kind of could have gone either way. Didn't come to it until that last Leeds goal right at the end, but bit of a nail biter. And I'm sure it was for you, Sam. How did you find the experience? What were you thinking at one point in the afternoon when it could have been on?
Yeah, it was an interesting afternoon. I think going into the game, there weren't many Liverpool fans who realistically thought there was much of a chance that Man City were not going to roll over Aston Villa at home. But Villa had a good go in the first half, got 2-0 up, and it's just a shame from my point of view that Liverpool couldn't have got ahead at any point while Man City weren't ahead, because I wonder if that had happened, if that would have sown some kind of psychological seed that it might have been getting away from them a little bit. But ultimately, I think we're kind of going into the last day of the season expecting both teams to roll over their opponents 3-0 or better at home, and it didn't work out that way. I think it wasn't quite so bad when you look at it in relation to that and the Champions League final, because you come from a position where you're 14 points behind going into the turn of the year, so to even be in with a chance of winning it on the last day of the season is quite incredible and a very remarkable achievement in itself. Were we a bit disappointed? Yes. I think the only time I started to believe that it was actually on was at half time when Villa were 2 up, and it was 1-1 in the Liverpool game. But like I said, I think it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Liverpool had have scored to go 2-1 up while Man City were behind. But it's buts and maybes. I think over the course of the season, Manchester City deserved to win it. I think they're by far the better team over the 38 game stretch, even though the points total is very close. There's a lot of last minute winners in Liverpool games up and down the season, and Man City just tend to sort of roll out the troops and get comfortable wins week in, week out. So I can't really begrudge them winning the Premier League. I think they deserved it over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think it was just a spectacle of the last day of the season, really. Like everything still to play for that made it one of probably the best climaxes we've had in quite a while to the Premier League season. Obviously, Charlie mentioned about Arsenal there. Probably whoever expected anything from Norwich, but it was just everything going on at once. It was a bit of carnage, really. I did have quite a bit of banter with some Liverpool fans in the pub, so I was enjoying that one at the same time at the end of the day. And not at the start of the day, it wasn't going well at the start, but it was good fun.
There was a stage when City were 2-0 down, Liverpool were drawing, and United were in the Conference League.
Mm-hmm.
That was
that was going well. That
potential
stage,
for
literally they were getting very excited. I think Liverpool had like an offside goal as well, didn't they? Which was, I think, late first half, early second half, and they were just going absolutely crazy at that point because that could have been going perfectly how they wanted it to, but kind of got away with it in the end as a United fan. So back to you, Sam. Just overall for the season for Liverpool, is it kind of where you expected to be second? I think we've always spoke about how City have that kind of, I don't know, awe about them, about just rolling over teams. Are you happy with second overall if you were looking at it from the start of the season?
well, I don't know if you could say you're happy with second, but at the same time, that's just a measure of how far it's come in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. 3 years ago, if you'd have said you're happy with second in a Champions League final, you'd have snapped your hand off for that. I think it's just the way that it arrived in that manner that I didn't really expect. I thought there'd be a bit more of a close to and fro for the whole season, whereas Man City and Chelsea dominated the first half of the season. Chelsea choked around Christmas. Man City choked a little bit less, and Liverpool just were relentless from the turn of the year. So, I think overall you can't be disappointed with being involved in the title race on the last day of the season and missing out to an exceptional Man City team. A little bit disappointed that we couldn't get over the line ourselves, and you look back through the season to some results that we probably should have got 3 points out of games where we ended up getting draws. And it's hindsight is a wonderful thing, but it's been a brilliant season. So I don't think you can be too disappointed in ending up on, I think it's 94 points. I think we ended up on 93 points, something like that. So
Yeah, just the level between you and Man City has been phenomenal the last 3 or 4 years, hasn't it? I think I saw a stat where there's like 1 point between you over the 4 seasons, and like you've won 1 title, which is just crazy. Like in any other era of the Premier League, you'd be celebrating probably 3, even 4. So just pure madness. And back to you, Charlie. Overall for the season, 5th. I know you'll have some disappointment at the end of the season, but if you was given 5th at the start of the season, would you see that as progress, or are you just slightly annoyed at 4th still?
I think if, in retrospect, I think you have to you have to take 5th. I don't think anyone, obviously this is all with the benefit of hindsight, but at the beginning of the season, no, I don't think anyone was calling Arsenal for even a shot at the top 4. So to have come so close, obviously it's more difficult having come through that and being in pole position for hitting the 4th place and then losing out in the last couple of weeks makes it a bit tougher to think this way. But yeah, in reality, at the beginning of the season, even talking about Arsenal potentially finishing 4th was a long shot. So I think all things considered, it was probably as best as we would have hoped for at the beginning of the season. And considering the way the squad's been trimmed down, we've got rid of a lot of the sort of players that haven't really been core to the squad through the season and haven't really been the ones that have performed. So all the players that are left really are the ones that have really been fighting for the team and to stay in their position. So I think things are looking up. It's going to be very tough going into next year, though, obviously, with now getting European football again. So playing more regularly, we'll have to build up that squad. Definitely will need quite a number of signings to build up the depth that will be needed. So it will be very tough to compete for top 4 again next season. But yeah, I think overall, I think 5th is a fair or even good outcome for Arsenal based on from the beginning of the season.
Yeah, we'll be meeting you in the Europa League next season then. I think it just scraped it, as we touched on. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into United. I feel like we've talked about that all season, so we're not going to deep dive into that again, are we? Bring out that kind of worms. I'm sure when we get to the awards section in the second half, there might be some United players bouncing about, not in the actual team of the season, I'm sure. So I don't know, I wanted to flip it, just going back to FPL, so the last game week of the season and FPL overall. Back to you, Sam. Last game week, how did it go, and how do you feel your overall FPL has gone this season? I'm assuming, based on your lead you had, you won the Family Mini League. I'm hoping it didn't bottle it last week, but how did it go?
Yeah, we got 64 points in the last game week, which was pretty good. Brought Mane in on the at the last minute to come in for Salah, who I thought was potentially going to be rested ahead of the Champions League final, which he was, which was good, and Mane scored, which was even better. Yeah, got the mini league one, the family mini league. Matt put up a brave fight, but ended up about 60 points short in the end. So in the title there. And on to next season, I suppose. It's been a decent year. Had a brilliant start. Kind of fell apart over Christmas with all of the fixture cancellations, and didn't really get any traction going again till sort of April time, which was a bit late to catch up on anything else really.
Yeah, I think mine was a bit opposite. I think I had a slow start and then probably got a bit better as it went on. Very similar to score that I got in game week 38 of 65. The only move I made was, who did I get rid of? Oh yeah, typically I got rid of Coutinho, didn't I? Who typically decides to score against City, and I brought in Luis Diaz for Liverpool, and I know he missed at least a one-on-one, but didn't return anything there, so didn't really get any returns from that transfer. But solid score, got Zaha and Vardy and Son really carrying the team. So yeah, like I said, it's very similar to you. I think I can't remember. I know I was slightly above you, wasn't I, in the Wilbur Premier League, finishing third. Oh, you can't be happy with that, Sam. Finishing below Pete.
No, I am disappointed with that one, to be honest. That's going to be a long summer to try and sort that one out. But we'll have a go next year.
Yeah. So overall, my season, I wasn't too concerned. I think I recovered it a bit tail end of the season. About 214k ended up in the end. I got to end of game week 36. I got to the rank I wanted to get to, and then the last 2 weeks I just had a bit of fun with it. So that was fine by me. And over to Charlie, who had a bit of a big title fight, what we weren't expecting in Wilbur Games Premier League. And the wheels might have fell off for him at the end of that title run. How was your last week, Charlie, and how have you felt the season's gone overall?
Yeah, I think wheels coming off is a very adequate way of describing how my season finished. Generally speaking, in FPL, my season is the opposite of Arsenal's season. So if Arsenal do badly, I do well, and if I do well, Arsenal do badly. But unfortunately for me, the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, both Arsenal and me have done badly. So it's not been great end of the season really. I think I had 3 red arrows in the last 4 game weeks. Most seasons I'm normally kind of pushing up towards the end of the season, whereas this time it's been a bit of a heavy fall down. So yeah, not great, but just kind of looking forward and on to the next season as a bit of a refresh.
Yeah, is there anything you're going to take from this season, Charlie, to on to next season to kind of learn and improve on for next season, or do you think it's just one of those like random seasons of everything that's been going on? Just it's one of those like years kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think I don't expect, or it'll be a bit of a nightmare if it's anything near as chaotic as this season was, with, like Sam mentioned, all the sort of COVID postponements and changes in fixtures and stuff. Everything seems to be under wraps with that now, in terms of even if there were cases and things like that, they're much more strict on the rules of when games can actually be postponed and stuff like that. So I'm expecting next season to be much more normal, barring obviously the World Cup break, which will make for an interesting little break in between. But so I think there is a big aspect of treating this as kind of one-off season, but then maybe that's an easy way for me to look at it, having not done so well this year. But I think probably in my mind, at least, reflection, I think I would want to just be a bit more methodical about how I plan and do my transfers and set my chip strategy as well this season. And I think it's partly in because of the way things have fallen with COVID and postponements and stuff. I've played much more week to week and focusing on the fixtures right ahead of you rather than a little bit more long term, which I think has been a bit of a downfall. Normally I am much more of a long term planner and thinker, so I think a bit more of a return to that for next season will probably help me do a bit better.
Yeah, I think definitely when you're trying to plan stuff, it's just been thrown into chaos, hasn't it? Because you want to target people who've got double game weeks, even if it's like an Everton player or whatever it is. So it kind of throws kind of whole plan how you normally plan throughout the season out the window, doesn't it? So it's been a difficult one to manage, but I think there's key bits like you've said you can take forward going to next season. One definitely for me is don't captain Havertz against Salah. That's top of the list. And I think another one would be just be like, when I say something, actually do it rather than recommending it. I remember with Ferran Torres, for example, earlier in the season, or Sterling has done a lot of damage to me. You can see where I'm stuck on certain players where they've like gone against me this season. I think we mentioned it on the last pod, or maybe the one before. No, it might have actually been a few back to be fair, where I just had a thing about I kept missing hat tricks early in the season. It was doing my head in. I know Ronaldo and Sterling, I transferred them both out the week before they scored a hat trick. And it's just sort of stuck in my head. I did get Ronaldo's hat trick back in a later week, but those City attackers will always haunt me in some way. I need to learn how to deal with those. I don't think anyone will ever learn to deal with those, especially with a certain Haaland to join them.
Speaking about captaincy as well, in terms of things to not do next season, I don't know if any people that have there's an option for having email contact on for FPL. Anyone that has it on will have received a review. They do like a review email, which is the first time I've ever seen it. I think it's new this year. From the Fantasy Premier League, and they'll give you a few sort of breakdown and stats of your season. And they very kindly reminded me of my lowest captain score being Dennis's -2 when I captained him. So something to remember next season is don't captain a double game week player just because they've got 2 fixtures. Actually take into account the team they're playing for.
That was one of those weeks, wasn't it? Because I think I captained King and he got like 2 points and I was happy because I didn't get a negative. That was just one of those weird ones. Yeah, sometimes it's quality of player over the amount of fixtures, but you always have to look at it, don't you, and weigh it up. But I think all of us looking back now, looking at Watford, we're like, yeah, we really shouldn't have gone there. Was there anything from your point of view, Sam, that you wanted to learn going into next season that you've kind of taken on board from this mad season that we've had?
No, I don't think so. I think given the respective finish in and amongst everyone else, considering just how bad of a time I had it around the turn of the year with fixture cancellations, I think if the fixture cancellations wouldn't have happened, it definitely would have been more competitive, and I think and very much would have finished inside the top 4 of the mini league. So I think not an absolute disaster, but just need to try and season next year. I got everything. It was amazing, really, how at the start of the season you get the plan together, you get the spreadsheet out, you work out what you're going to do, find yourself pushing into the top 10,000. As soon as you stop doing all of that, you end up sliding down dramatically. So I think just stick with it for the whole season next season would be my advice to myself.
Yeah. Well, quite a few things I think we can all work on, aren't we, across the board? And like we said, it's a difficult season, but then there's still things you can take from it to move forward. So I wanted to round off kind of the FPL season by doing the quiz about FPL, which is going to look back basically on all the weeks that we've played throughout the season. So get your brains ready, guys, because we're going to have this quiz to round off our FPL season. So I'm going to take it in turns. I've got a list. So I'm going to be asking you to name the kings of the game weeks throughout the whole FPL season. So a king of the game week is who scored the most points in each individual game week. So we're talking about game weeks 1 to 38. There are 29 different players here. So some players have had the king of the game week more than once. So as it's I'm going to say a special edition here because we're doing a season end review. If you name a player who has got more than one king of the game week, you will get extra points. So however many king of the game weeks they've got, you will get that number. So if someone had 5, for example, you will get 5 points. Just to give you a bit more incentive to go for some of the big ones early on. And we're going to do, if you will get 1 life each, you can have 1 wrong answer each. I'll be nice. If you duplicate someone's answer, I will not count that as a life. But for example, if Sam lost his life and then got another one wrong, I will allow Charlie to keep guessing until he's out. So you've got to be careful when you're answering because the other person can get unlimited answers after that point. If that all makes sense.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Right. So totally up to you guys. I don't know if you see it as an advantage going first or second. I'm happy to flip a coin if you don't. If neither of you wants to go first, but obviously there's a key part. If you're going first, you could get some bigger points, but then later on you might regret it.
I think flip a coin. It's the fairest way.
Okay, let me flip this. Right, heads will be Charlie and tails will be Sam. There you go, Charlie. You first. Heads.
Nice.
So there's 29 separate answers, but bear in mind some of those 29 will have more than one. So over to you to start us, Charlie.
So I'm pretty sure he's either going to be one of the highest, or if not close in terms of number of times appearing on it, will be Son.
Yep, Son has appeared 3 times, so straight in there with the highest amount of points there. That he is the only player who has got 3, so you've taken a maximum point straight away there. And there's no other. There's quite a few on 2, and then obviously everyone else is on 1. So you've set the gauntlet straight there to Sam with your 3-pointer.
All right, let's go for Salah.
Yep, of course, 2 points. He's had it twice, which I was surprised that I didn't get. I think it was till about game weeks 15ish. He didn't even actually get one. And Son, just going back to what Charlie said, didn't get one until game week 30, but then got one in game week 30, 32, and 35. Which is pretty crazy. How about you, Charlie? 2 points for Sam there.
Reece James.
Another 2-pointer there for Reece James. Correct.
Cancelo.
Cancelo, another 2-pointer.
Let's stick with the defenders. I'm going to go for a Wilbur favourite and go with Matty Cash.
Yeah, right up there. 2-pointer. Love to see it. I think he actually got the highest points of the season. Oh no, well, I think KDB ruined it, didn't he, right at the end? He was on for being the highest scorer in a game week, but I think KDB ruined it, fortunately.
All right, well, I'll go for KDB.
Hint there. Yeah, he had 2 as well. 2 points for you.
I'm going to go for my much talked about Mason Mount.
So Mount was 1 point. He only got it once. 1 point. Over to you, Sam.
Raheem Sterling.
Not him again. Yeah, that is a 1-pointer. So because you both had the same amount of goes, I'll give you some guidance that there's still 2 2-pointers available. Everyone else is a 1-pointer.
Let's go with James Madison.
That is one of the 2-pointers.
That one. What's the next one? Okay. Let's go for Kulusevski.
Yep, the very last game week. 1-pointer.
I'm pretty sure game week 1 was Bruno Fernando.
Is that what you're going with?
Yeah, Bruno Fernandes.
He's actually your last 2-pointer because he also. I think
you got a second one.
Yeah, I think it was one of the double game weeks, like 20 odd. I can't remember what number it was, where he got like a 20-pointer again. So
I just remember him doing really well that first game week. But
yeah, it was game week 1 and then one, I think, around 23ish. I think. Yeah, so you're still in all the big pointers there, Charlie. So another 2-pointer. Nice. Only 1-pointers left now. Back to you, Sam.
Yeah. Let's go for Bowen.
That is correct. Only 1. Yeah, like I said, there's only 1-pointers left now, so I won't tell you that one.
Another name I've got down where I'm pretty sure he was the top scorer that week, because he subsequently got brought in by just about everybody, was James Doherty.
Yep, Doherty is correct. The week after Sterling.
Okay. Jesus.
Correct. Famously with his 4 goals when I had Sterling in my team who scored 0 returns. Back to you, Charlie.
It's getting tough now. I've got an outside shot at one, which I know he was very high that scored that week, but I can't remember if it was the top or not.
Risky business.
I think I'll park that one for now. I think Mings was one of them somewhere along the way.
Is that what you're going with?
Yeah, Mings.
Mings is correct.
Coutinho.
Definitely correct. He had that double game week, didn't he, where he went crazy.
Okay, we're scraping the barrel now.
I'm literally thinking the same words.
I'm just going to go with this one because I'm not sure. I believe the superior Bruno Guimaraes, was the top scorer that week. That I think he scored 2 goals or something. So yeah, that's my answer, Guimaraes.
That is correct. 20-pointer in that week.
Joel Matip.
That is correct as well. I think that was a double game week again, where I think didn't he score? He got some kind of contribution.
He got 2 goals, 2 goals in one game week.
Yeah.
Well, I am a little stumped now. See, the problem with this is it's normally like a very left field, like with the Guimaraes. It's like
it can
someone
be anyone,
left
can't
field
it, really, yeah.
on a one-off game week.
So you've got 11 players left.
God, that's still a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to take a stab in the dark, I think.
You do get 1 live, so you won't be fully out, but you'll be on your last legs.
I don't know if he would have been the top scorer or not, but I'm just going to take a stab at Cristiano Ronaldo when he got that hat-trick.
I was surprised he's not on the list, so that is incorrect. I was looking for him when I was going down it, but he wasn't there, fortunately. So back to Sam, but Charlie's lost a life.
Okay, I've got a couple more I think are right, and then I'm in trouble as well. So I'm going to go Richarlison.
That is correct. One of the more recent ones.
I think I've just remembered one, because I think this was Burnley's double game week that Nick Pope got the highest, or he certainly would have done, because he did very well and people started bringing him in. So I'm going to go with Nick Pope.
Could be a risky one since your last live. But luckily for you,
I've got no other options. I can't think of anything else.
It is correct.
So yeah, well, Pope was one of mine, so that's been sufficiently robbed. Yeah. The other one, I think we've already mentioned him. He's had his name in lights in this pod already once. Ferran Torres.
I couldn't believe that didn't come up earlier.
Yeah.
That is correct. It was against Arsenal as well, I'm pretty sure.
After Will spent the first half of the season recommending him.
True.
And he came up in 1 game week and that was it.
Yeah.
Right, so to put some perspective, Charlie currently winning by 1 point. You've lost 1 life. So if you get another one wrong, you're out. I'm pretty sure we've got 9, is it left, or 8? No, we've got 8 left.
I'm just going to have to guess it. The problem is you can't even make an educated guess, like we said, because it's like a random. It could be just a random.
Yeah, you just need to envisage 1 game week where someone went crazy, don't you?
Yeah, I've already done that. I can't do that anymore.
Which I'm not going to lie. Yeah, some of these names I wouldn't imagine going crazy.
Okay. I'm just going to take a stab at Jota, maybe. I don't know.
Is that one to go with?
Yeah.
That is incorrect.
Yeah.
So Charlie.
That would have been my stab as well.
So Charlie is out, and Charlie's currently got a lead of 1 point. So you need at least one to draw, Sam. If you get 2, you will win. And bear in mind, you've also got a life, so...
I think it's only fitting that you only get 1 so we can draw.
I'm gonna get
so typical.
We're gonna get two plucks in the dark here.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think. I don't think there would have been any other Liverpool players in there. I don't think Alisson would have got enough points in 1 week. Don't think Firmino would have played enough. I mean, I'm literally just going to be guessing at this point. So let's start with a guess for Ivan Toney.
That is incorrect. So 1 life and 1 point behind.
All right, and let's go for Mikel Antonio.
That is also incorrect.
Yeah.
Scenes.
Had the chance and he scraped it from the claws of defeat. Or some of these
Nicely done.
Good luck. There was a Liverpool player on this list. And you literally just said his name.
What? Alisson?
No.
Firmino.
Firmino.
Yeah. Wasn't there a week where he scored a hat-trick? I remember. Was it against Watford or something? I've
there
got
was.
a screenshot of all the points.
So, in true Sam style, he's talked himself out of one of the correct answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a screenshot. I'm just having a look how many points he got. Yeah, he got a week where he got 20 points. That must have surely been a hat-trick as a forward for that amount. What game week was that then? Game week 8. So we're flying back quite a bit. Some of these answers on here are like, I don't think you'd ever get. There's a lot of defenders on this list. Let's put it this way. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Four of the 8 you had left are defenders.
I feel like there's going to be at least one other. Oh no, you had Charlie had Mings, didn't he? Villa went for a period where they kept loads of clean sheets.
I was literally going to say there's 4 Villa defenders on this list. You've got Mings, you've got Cash. There's 2 other Villa defenders.
What's the English guy, the young guy? What's his name? Conser?
Yeah, Conser's on there. And then Courtney Hawes is also on there. Because I'm pretty sure he scored. And yeah, I'm looking at his score. He got 15 points. So I'm pretty sure he scored, got all the bonus, and got a clean sheet. Another defender there, Marcel from Wolves, in game week 4, going all the way back. Another defender on there, Lorente from Leeds, the centre back.
A Leeds defender got in the game. What?
Exactly the same points again, 15 points. So I'm expecting exactly the same. And then there's 3 others on this list. One is a goalkeeper, saved a penalty and kept a clean sheet. Any ideas?
No, I can't remember.
No, Lloris.
Schmeichel.
All right.
So saved a penalty and kept a clean sheet. And then we've got a Leicester player and we've got a Spurs player left.
Harvey Barnes, but maybe?
Incorrect.
Tielemans.
Correct.
Mm.
And then you've got a Spurs player.
Kane?
Yeah, I was surprised no one said Kane, but it's not actually Kane.
Okay.
It's Lucas Moura.
Uh,
There were some rogue ones at the bottom there. Some of those defenders like Marcel, good luck remembering to game week 4. When was Lucas Moura? Lucas Moura was game week 19, so it's not too far away. But I guess with all the fixtures we've had, it feels like it's been years ago, doesn't it? But there we go. We've rounded up the season, and we'll say Charlie is the champion then.
yeah, congratulations.
At least you've split. If you got one there, I would be so annoyed. That just summed up the whole season. Alright, we're going to move on from that last quiz of the season as well. We're going to move on to a bit of end of season awards ceremony, shall we call it. Suggested categories, credits go to Sam. we're going to have a look at different categories and discuss who we think should win each category. So we're going to start from the very top. Player of the season. I think straight up to you, Sam. Who would your nomination for player of the season be?
Okay, excellent. Right, my player of the season is Mohamed Salah. He scored 23 goals this season. I know Son also scored 23 goals, and actually none of Son's were penalties. But he also managed to rack up quite an astounding number of assists as well for someone that's perceived to not pass the ball very often. He got 13 assists as well. Just the first half of the season this year for Salah was like performance week after week after week that the whole world was quite happily sat there proclaiming that he was the best in the world. And I genuinely believe for the first half of this season, maybe even into January, before he went off to the AFCON, that he was just a level above every other player in world football for that period. It was just an absolute joy to watch him every single week. And then he kind of got found out a little bit. I think a lot of the contract talk got to his head a little bit. I think definitely Egypt missing out on the AFCON and then missing out on the World Cup as well got to him a little bit. And it wasn't quite the same Salah for the second half of the season, but still put in some brilliant numbers. His off the ball work's been brilliant. Done a lot of defensive stuff for Liverpool over the course of the season. Led the Golden Boot race since week 1. Just moved up to 9th in Liverpool's all-time goal scoring standings, which for a winger isn't too bad. I think he's just been outstanding this year, and to have really got to that incredible level for the first half of the season to then have dropped off. I think you sort of average out at a level that's just slightly above everybody else in the league. So Mo Salah is my player of the season.
What would you say, Charlie, based on what Sam has said?
I have agreed. I've also gone with Salah. I have got honourable mentions for KDB and Son. But I think, I think it's difficult because I don't think any one player has demonstrated across the whole season. Like Sam said, obviously Salah's predominantly it was the first half of the season, but in that first half of the season, again, like Sam said, he was like by far, or maybe not even by far, but was the best player in the world for that period. Whereas I think KDB, you could probably argue in some games, particularly in the second half of the season, has been coming to that level in terms of his position, but certainly not for as long a period as Salah did it for the season. And I think Son has obviously been amazing, like Sam said, with the equaling the goal tally as Salah without penalties. But it hasn't felt as consistent as Salah did it in that first half of the season. So, for basically the same reasons, I've gone with Salah as well.
Yeah, so mine was a two-man shortlist, and obviously Salah is from Liverpool, so I'd favoured Son. I feel like if there was a player of the season for the first half, Salah would get it, and if there was a second half, Son would get it. So it's pretty even between them, and the fact that Son wasn't on penalties swayed it for me, and also the fact that I feel like if Son wasn't in Spurs' team, they'd be nowhere near where they are now. Whereas I feel like Liverpool or City probably could have covered like a KDB or a Salah spot. Maybe not to the higher quality, but there'd be a lower drop off if those players were missing from their teams. So I'd edged it to Son, but then Salah was a very close second. So if he was making a joint decision, I'm no issue going with Salah, but I was just edging towards Son for me personally.
Interesting. So do you think, and you know, I can't deny Son had a brilliant season as well, but so do you think Son's second half of the season was better than Salah's first half of the season?
No, I don't. But I think Son's first half of the season was better than Salah's second half of the season, because Son kept ticking away quite nicely the first half of the season. No one really noticed him. So overall, I think he slightly edges it.
Yep, fair enough.
It's very close between them, to be fair. So, and like Salah, if he had a few odd games second half of the season where he got that few odd, like another goal or two, then it'd probably be different. But it's like I said, it's very close to call anyway. So I wouldn't disagree with either of them getting the award really. So what we
Fair enough. So we're agreeing on Mo default player of the season, for the
I'm happy
pods
to.
player of the season.
Yeah, for 2-1, I'll take that. And like I said, it was very close anyway, so I've no issue with that. So go to you first, Charlie. So we nearly missed one. What about young player of the season? Who would that be going to for you?
Well, so we kicked off player of the season with the Liverpool fans suggesting Salah. We're going to kick off young player of the season with an Arsenal fan suggesting Saka. It was given to Foden in real life, and I think Foden has done well, but I don't feel like he's done enough. And I'm sure you'll agree with me here, Will, because I know you hate Foden. I don't feel like Foden's done enough to warrant.
But...
I know. I don't feel like he's done enough to necessarily justify that, particularly in that City team. Like the same argument you made for Son, I think without Saka in the Arsenal team, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we were. And particularly with the players that have come out of the Arsenal team and the lack of goals, he's just added that to his game amazingly well. I never saw him as a kind of a clinical finisher, and he's starting to turn into that now. So I think I hope it's not with too much bias behind it, but I think I've gone with Saka just because 11 goals, 7 assists, which was more than Foden did as well, and the importance to the team as well. That would be my guess. Outside of them, I don't think there's many big shouts for across the whole season. I think maybe someone like Conor Gallagher, perhaps you could just add into the conversation at least. But yeah, I've gone with Saka.
How about you, Sam?
Well, I've gone with someone outside of the conversation then.
Maybe I'm forgetting something.
I think I think Saka is a valid shout. I think Gallagher, particularly first half of the season, again, really strong performance. I also agree, for what it's worth, on Foden having had a really good season, particularly first half of the season. I thought he was really good, but then just sort of, as City players, if you're not De Bruyne, tend to do in the second half of the season, sort of, I don't want to say fade into the rotation, because that sounds like they all underperform. They don't underperform, they all perform, but there's just so many superstars in that team that you kind of get a little bit lost in who's playing each week. But my nomination is going to sound particularly biased as well. I've gone for Trent Alexander-Arnold. 31 games this season, 22 wins, only 2 defeats, 2 goals, 12 assists, 17 clean sheets. In my opinion, it's had the biggest individual impact on his retrospective position in the league versus all the other nominees on the Young Player of the Year list. Only him and one other player from that list got into my team of the season. I think when you look at the list of the actual Premier League nominees, and there were some other ones outside of that, there's an array of talent on there. And you could say of most of them, it's quite ironic that he's probably not in. There's probably 2 or 3 of them on there at least who are perceived to be ahead of him in the pecking order of international level. But I also think if you go around the world and give almost any club in the world the choice of any right back from any club in the world, they're going to take Trent. And I think with regards to all of the other nominees from their respective position, I don't think they're going to take any of the players from their positions, if that makes sense. I just think what he did this season just continues to build every year on year. It's kind of a little bit unfortunate in some degree not to get the most assists in the league. What he does is quite incredible. I know it's a little bit of a quite. I think he is 23 now, so you've got to be 23 to be nominated in the Premier League one. But I don't think we set an age gap for ours. Just took it from the list of those nominated by the Premier League. But Trent gets my vote.
Oh, a choice between a Liverpool player and an Arsenal player. Fantastic. Well, I did have Saka top of my list as well as Charlie, so it wasn't too biased there. There might be some bias of me towards Liverpool there. And yeah, I think Trent's been around for so long, doesn't he? It feels like he's not a young player, but I get what you mean from the nominees list. I think I'd still be swaying slightly to Saka. I think how he's come back from the disappointment of the penalty shootout last summer as well. Just to bounce back like that and kind of drag. It's very similar to how I've just talked about Son, that he's made a big impact on that team. If he wasn't in their team, I don't think they'd be anywhere near they were where they are now. So I'd be edging it to Saka. It's very legitimate what you say about Trent, Sam. I'm not debating that, but I think I'd edge Saka from my point of view.
In fairness,
Yeah, like, I can't. Sorry, go on. Yeah,
no,
no, I can't. I'm
go.
just going to say I can't begrudge Saka. I think Saka's had a brilliant season, and like you say, Will, Trent's been doing what he's been doing for such a number of seasons now that you almost forget that he's still only 23. I think you're right in saying that without Saka, Arsenal wouldn't be where they are. I think without Trent, Liverpool wouldn't be where they are. They probably, I think this season was the season where Trent's defensive play improved to be of a point where you can't really, unless you're really looking to go digging in on the football banter as such. I don't think Trent's defending is any longer a valid point of argument, if it even was one before. I think it's now up to a standard where you don't have a natural offset from poor defensive, like sort of having to be made up from the attacking flair. Now I think just the attacking flair, like, it just naturally just sets off ahead of what is a good level of base defending. Yeah, I can't begrudge Saka. If we want to give it to Saka, I'm fine with that. But yeah, recognition for another unbelievable season for both of them, to be fair.
From my side as well, to be fair, I didn't even consider Trent. I was going based off the player's young player rather than whatever the normal one would be, and Trent wouldn't have got in that based on age. But I think if we're including Trent in the conversation for young player, then in terms of age, then I think I would probably go for him over Saka actually.
Yeah, I think it's because on the nominations, Trent was nominated for Young Player of the Year, so that's
for the main one. Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go with Saka. I think maybe what he's done this season in particular has been a bigger acceleration in the level of performance he's put in onto other years, whereas Trent's just continuing to grow at the same rate to what he's doing on other years, which is still putting him on a decent standard. So I'm happy to go with Saka.
Yeah, definitely that improvement in the season, isn't it? Like kind of getting used to how Trent performs, so you're kind of taking it a bit for granted, shall we say? I was going to make a comment about Trent's defending, but I will not. So we move on to the next one. Surprise player of the season. Back to you, Sam. Surprise player for you?
Yeah. So I've gone for Jared Bowen from West Ham. I think it was one of the first pods we did this year, where we were sort of all in agreement that West Ham might struggle because of their European commitments. It's been quite the opposite, to be honest. 12 goals from 36 appearances versus 8 goals from 38 appearances in 2021, just in the Premier League. This is obviously, and 10 assists this season against 5 assists last season. So fully deserved England call up. I didn't think West Ham are going to be where they are. And to be honest, towards the start of the season, I think Mikel Antonio probably stole a little bit of the headlines. But Bowen's been nothing short of brilliant. Just been one of the players that I've really enjoyed watching every week in the Premier League. You know, in 2020, West Ham was 16th. Last year, they got to 6th. And this year, they're 7th, having had a full European semi-final campaign in there as well. What they've achieved is brilliant. And I think Bowen has been, along with maybe one or two others, the absolute key to getting them to where they are. So hats off to Jared Bowen. He's been fantastic to watch this season, and he's my surprise player of the season.
I will jump in there because that was literally top of my list. I had Bowen as well. Very much the same points as you. I think kind of carried West Ham through a majority of the season. Like you said, Antonio and maybe Ben Rama carried them earlier in the season, but he's basically carried them to where they are. Obviously, they've got a good stable base to build on with the rest of their team, but especially from the goal scoring point of view, he's kind of carried that main attacking threat. I had 2 honourable mentions. We've just been talking about Saka. Like, I think that progression that we've seen made him a bit of a surprise how much he's developed so quickly in that season. And then the third, I had a bit of an outside shout. When he's been fit, I feel like we've seen a bit more consistency from Madison. And I've just looked at the goal scoring charts as well, that Madison has got the same goals as Bowen and two assists less from far less games. So I think if Madison got a full season as well, you might not call it a surprise, but I think when he's actually been fit, I think it's been surprising how consistent he's been. So just a very outside one there for you. How about you, Charlie?
Well, let's make it a hat trick. I also went for Jared Bowen. I don't think I need to add anything else beyond what you two have already said, so we'll leave it at that.
No. Cool. That was an easy one. Well, that might be more controversial, the next one, shall we say. The most underperforming player of the season. So we'll go straight back to you, Charlie. What are your opinions on this category?
Can we make a case for the entire United team? Maybe no. I went with Romelu Lukaku, and I think there is an aspect of it which is maybe down to the manager and Tuchel, and maybe not necessarily particularly suiting the same style. But I think, and this was kind of clear from FPL as well at the beginning of the season when Lukaku did sign, we all thought. That was potentially Chelsea now in the title race and competing. And he started well. I think he got a goal against Arsenal, and then pretty much ever since then has completely fallen off. And it looks like he's probably on his way out of the door this summer. So I think based on the expectation of what he could have brought, I think he would be my biggest disappointment. I think there is a case, all joking aside, for quite a few Man United players. I don't think I would put Ronaldo in this category, just because from a personal point of view, I didn't actually expect him to do that much or any better than he has done. Maybe someone like Varane as well. You could toss in the equation, but then that could be down to as well the players around him as well. But yeah, Lukaku would be my pick.
I feel like it's a good time for me to interject. It's bad when we get to the season review and I'm having to do the underperforming players speciality section. But I'm not going to lie, my list is very similar. The first bit I put down was United, like literally, just in general. Like you said on Ronaldo, I wouldn't class Ronaldo in there at all, considering he had more, like he was the highest goal scoring actual centre forward. He even got more than Kane. So I'd definitely say he's kind of outside the criticism a bit because the rest of the team's so poor. But yeah, just full stop. Iron Varane kind of as one of those ones that you'd expect better from just because he's high caliber of player. But again, the whole United squad around him's not helping that. And then my top player let down again is exactly the same as you, Charlie, was Lukaku. It looks like he might be going. He's trying to get a move back to winter by the sounds of it, and that kind of interview he did kind of mid-season was just a bit embarrassing, and yeah, wasn't good. We can't really gauge someone's FPL performance and how they're doing against Arsenal, can we? Otherwise, we'd all have Ferran Torres in for the whole season. But very similar to you. Does yours differ, Sam, compared to what we've got?
Ever so slightly. I mean, I tried to think as sort of inside and outside the box with this one, and ended up sort of a bit of a left field answer, actually, more actual by mistake. I didn't even consider this person until I sort of was going through everyone else. I thought about Lukaku as well, but when looking into it, Lukaku did score 8 goals this season, which is probably more than some of the other strikers in the Premier League. So although the perception versus expectation is probably is maybe the biggest disappointment in the league, I think in terms of actual return, there might be a couple of other more suitable candidates. I think particularly another perception of a disappointing season would fall to Bruno, but still got 10 goals and 6 assists. So whilst these players may not have had the seasons we expected them to have, maybe based on last season or based on transfer fee, they still at least returned something in a way for their respective clubs. I think it's difficult to look too much further than Jack Grealish at Villa. £100 million for 3 goals and 3 assists in the league this season is a pretty spectacular fall from grace from where he was at Villa. Just hasn't quite clicked for him this season in a number of respects. But it was actually, for me personally, one of the players I was most excited about. And when we did our start of season predictions, I think my player I was looking forward to seeing the most in the league this season was Leon Bailey at Aston Villa. So it only kind of feels fitting to me that I hand him the biggest disappointment. Signed for Villa from Leverkusen for 30 million. Had him in the fantasy team for game week 1, I think. Only 1 goal and 2 assists, only 18 appearances all season. Only one big chance created, just really a massive, massive flop. I don't think there's any other numbers that quite match up to a comparable point in terms of disappointment all round. So for me, Leon Bailey as the outside shout for my biggest disappointment. Honourable mentions to Grealish.
Yeah, I was looking at the Villa guys as well because I was seeing, obviously, looking at the signings for this from the start of the season. So Grealish obviously moved from Villa, and then Villa signed like a pool of players, really, didn't they, to cover it. And I saw like Buendia in that mix as well, which you could say was disappointing. And even Danny Ings probably a bit more to less extent to the end of the season. Coutinho's probably had a slightly more successful few games, shall we say. But I don't think a lot of those kind of moves have kind of turned out how both clubs would have wanted them to. And that kind of links us on greatly to the next section, which is the signing of the season. So straight back to you, Sam. Signing of the season, who pops out to you?
So who are we settling on for biggest disappointment?
Biggest disappointment.
Pick one of your United boys if you want. No, I think it's difficult because I guess it's very perception based, but
I think the Lukaku one is because how much they paid for him, the kind of expectation of him in that team, kind of like being the missing piece to lead that team to glory, and then it's obviously just gone terribly wrong, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm fine to accept a United player in this category. It's just there's too many to choose from.
I'm happy to go with Lukaku based on transfer fee being sort of, and as Charlie very very rightly pointed out, the sort of player that everyone sort of expects to come in and just be enough to clinch Chelsea the league. So yeah, I think and that one to Mr. Marsh.
Yeah, so we can go with Lukaku then for that one.
Cool.
Been ahead too quick there.
Sorry, go on.
Go back to you, Sam. Signing of the season. Who's up there for you?
Yeah, so I went for Kulusevski, Spurs. 5 goals and 8 assists in 18 appearances, 0.28 goals per game, 6 big chances created. Really close between him and Luis Diaz. I just felt that without Kulusevski, Spurs didn't get even close to the top 4. But without Diaz, Liverpool still would have finished second. So I think that was the thing that swayed it for me in the end.
How about you, Charlie?
So I had both of those players in my shouts. I had both Diaz and Kulusevski. I think, yeah, to their respective teams, they've just added so much. And I think maybe Kulusevski's is more important in the Spurs position in terms of who else would come in. But also I think the way Diaz has just slotted in and already become, for a long while it felt like who's going to break into that front three for Liverpool or even just play back up to them. And obviously Jota came in and sort of outed Firmino in a way. And now Diaz has done it for Jota basically, although maybe now Mane. So yeah, I think those two were definitely kind of my front runners. I did have a slight shout, very left field, for Cucurella for Brighton, which is, yeah, I don't expect necessarily to pick him as a winner for this, but I thought it was worth the mention. I think he has added a lot to Brighton. He's had a really good season. He's Brighton's player of the season as well. Whenever I've seen him, has been really good defensively and going forwards, and is already being linked with a move away. He's been linked with a move to Man City. He's been linked with moves abroad as well. So yeah, I thought I'd just get a mention in for him. But I think if I had to choose, I'd be happy with either Diaz or Kulusevski. I think I would give it to Diaz, but happy with either.
I don't think Cucurella's too left field. I'm a bit mixed on him because I did actually note him down and I'd crossed him out because I was like, I've heard mixed things from the Brighton fans. Like, he's got player of the season, but then I've heard a lot of people say he's actually not been that consistent across the season. But obviously I don't watch them week in, week out. But yeah, it's a fair shout that you said there. And the top two that I've got are exactly the same as you two. I had Kulusevski just in front of Diaz. So I think it's a clear competition between those two. So did you say you're going Diaz, Charlie?
I did, but I'm happy either way.
So if I go Kulusevski, who would you go, Sam? I think he's on the fence.
Sorry, no, his mic was muted. Yeah, Kulusevski for me. Kulusevski.
Cool, that's fine. Sounds good. Right, so we'll go back to Charlie to start this one off. Moment of the season for you, Charlie. You can be as biased or not biased as you like, probably on this. Might want two kind of answers.
Well, I've done exactly that. I thought of a biased one and then realised that probably wouldn't be sufficient for the purposes of a podcast. For a biased one, it was beating Spurs 3-1 at the Emirates. Traditionally, actually, or at least recently, the home team's always won in the derby, which it hasn't been that way for a while. But then in the last kind of 5-6 games, it's always been the home team anyway. But just the manner of it, it was not long after that much talked about 3 losses that we had at the beginning of the season. Then we had a couple of wins, and then this game, it felt like a really big sort of turnaround in our season. Actually beating one of the teams that were higher up in the league. And obviously our main rivals, and particularly as well because I think it was both Saka and Smith Rowe scoring in that game, which it kind of signified the start of their 2 seasons going really well. So, yeah, on a personal note, that it was that game for me. But in general across the whole season and with a non-biased view, I think I would go with either of the 2 Man City Liverpool games. I think they were both. It's just I'm always going to want to watch those games because they're clearly the best 2 teams in the league, if not the world, and they're not. They just don't back down when they come up against each other. They're not trying to be defensive or kind of counter specific points about the other. They just want to go out and play their own style. And I think particularly if I had to go for a very specific moment, I'd go for Salah's goal in the first game, which I think was at Anfield, where I think he sat down about 3 different Man City players and then scored with his right foot as well, his weak foot. So if I was going for a very specific moment, it'd be that. But just in general, the Man City Liverpool games, it's always a good one to watch.
Your moments compared to them, Sam?
So in terms of a bias one, it has to be 5-0 at Old Trafford. It doesn't get better. It was just absolute destruction on that day. And probably the best part was that one moment where they had the Kenny Dalglish Ferguson screenshot, sort of with both of their reactions portrayed next to each other. That was brilliant. But in terms of the whole season, I think for me, my moment of the season is Christian Eriksen's return, coming on as a sub for Brentford against Newcastle after the cardiac arrest in the Euros. That was a pretty cool moment for football in general and for life in general. I think there's been some brilliant moments, but I think that was just a really, really powerful moment. So that gets my vote.
I think I disagree with that one. Well, I will disagree because it was on my list, but might come back to that one. So my personal one, there wasn't many of them. Literally for United, kind of moment of the season, first day of the season, we did quite well. Then it went downhill. So that's literally the one moment, one day where we could cherish it. And I just had a moment of the season, that final Man City game, the comeback where they've turned it around. Just the kind of drama, and we don't generally see that on the final day of the season. So that's what I had. Honourable mention to Mark Noble as well, his last game. In the last few weeks of the season. So we've got a very much mix there at the moment, but I'm very happy to overrule with Eriksen as the moment of the season if Charlie agrees, which I think is just the poignant one, isn't it? That you just need to remember at times, don't you, that just football and life, both important, but it just all comes together in that magical moment, doesn't it, when it comes back on the pitch. So you've got to take that one as the moment of the season for me.
Cool.
So the last 2, so we're going to touch on team of the season in a minute where we're going to look at it, the full team. But last one then to you, Sam, manager of the season. What are you saying?
Yeah, I think normally in this situation, I think last year actually I went for Guardiola, considering I normally go for the manager that wins the league. This year I went for Thomas Frank, Brentford manager. I think to get Brentford up to 11th in their debut season in the Premier League is just nothing short of unbelievable. on the budget and resource that they have, having come up from the Championship. That is an absolutely outstanding achievement. So I had to go for Thomas Frank in this one. Wins over Chelsea, West Ham, Arsenal. A couple of big draws in there. They certainly gave us a real scare down at their place. So yeah, I think for me, Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that one because I think when we kind of did like a mid-season awards, didn't we, kind of thing? And I think I mentioned Frank as an outsider, but I think at that point they'd gone on a bit of a downward turn, but then probably like next like 5 or 10 games they had a real upturn. So I had him and Pep up there, but it was the debate between them, kind of the fact that you said obviously they've won the league, so it was either Pep or Frank for me. And
I think it's more just. Yeah, sorry to jump in. I think you can't take anything away from Guardiola, and I don't want to come across as not trying to recognise what Guardiola's done at Man City. Just in comparison with the resource that those two have, when you look at it direct against each other, I mean, it's impossible to say if Frank had the resource at City that Guardiola does, what he'd do there, because you just don't know. But you can only really deal with what you've got, and I think he's just done a brilliant job.
Yeah, shout out to Conte and Eddie Howe as well, who've obviously been there part of the season and done quite well when they've been there. But just to mention them, how about you, Charlie?
Yeah, so I've got both those names as well, Frank and Guardiola, for the same reasons you both said. I guess the only other thing to add would be, as an extra name, would be Vieira as well. Again, maybe that's a bit of an Arsenal bias, but I think the job he's done at Palace is pretty crazy, given the turnaround in players that they had in the off season, and effectively just completely overhauling their style of football as well, from Roy Hodgson, kind of much more defensive and so on, into a much more free flowing and attacking, pressing team. So I think that deserves an honourable mention. But yeah, I'm quite happy to go with Frank based on the job that he's done with Brentford, and like Sam said, with the resource, I think that's a great point to give him the win in that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to give him manager of the season. I think we all agree on that one.
All right, so best give it to Klopp then, don't we?
Definitely don't agree on that one. So we disagree with every award that they've given out, basically. Player of the year, young player, and manager. Disagreed with all of them, so we're the real pundits here. Right, so we'll move over to team of the season, which I'm sure will change quite a bit from when we previously did it. I'm pretty sure when we did it last time we had Dennis up front. So it would have been good to get the actual one we did and compare. I can imagine some of the other positions will be a bit more familiar, but I remember us putting Dennis up front because we had like no other striker to put there. So we'll start in goal, logically. Sam, who's your goalkeeper? I won't be surprised if I know who it is already.
Yeah, it is Alisson. Obviously tied the most number of clean sheets with Edison, but overall for the season had more punches, high claims, sweeper clearances, and accurate long balls, and got an assist as well. So I just think 1v1 Alisson is the best in the world, and considering that just suits Liverpool's game to a T, where they play with such a high line. I think you look at the number of 1v1 saves that he's made. Edison's a top quality goalkeeper, don't get me wrong, but I think Alisson would still make a significant number of saves if he didn't have as quality a back four in front of him as he's got. Whereas I'm not 100% convinced with Edison. Obviously, I watch Alisson a lot more than I watch Edison, but for me, Alisson gets my vote.
Unfortunately, I had Alisson as well. I think, just that he saves Liverpool points, doesn't he? And he's just that rock you need behind the defence, especially if you're playing a high line. It's really important to the way you play, and I can't really disagree. Yeah, clearly that one assist tipped the scale, but no, I think, like you said, he's just slightly, nothing against Edison, but slightly better, especially coming out on the one-on-ones. So I'd be going with him as well. How about you, Charlie?
Yeah, let's make it 3 from 3. I've also gone Alisson. I think you can only give it to one of those two. I think there hasn't been any other keeper that sustained it for the whole season. Obviously, the likes of Jose Sara, who I think we gave it to mid-season, but Wolves just completely dropped off. And similar to Ramsdale, had a great first half, but second half of the season has not gone well. And so, yeah, in comparison between Alisson and Edison, same sort of statistics Sam mentioned as well. And Allison also has the better save percentage, having also faced more saves as well. So there's it's more accurate seeing that, and he's got the highest number of defensive. So he's more involved because he's got the highest number of defensive actions outside of the penalty area as well. So he's called into action much more than Edison as well. So similar to what you were saying there, Will, that he kind of is much more involved in keeping clean sheets than maybe Edison, where it's a bit more possession based. So yeah, I'm very happy to give it to Allison.
Nice easy start there. 3 in the bank for it, Allison. Should we move on to fullbacks? We'll start with them in the defence. I feel like there'll be a few kind of standard names. If I throw my 2 names straight out there, Trent and Cancelo. I think we've kind of spoke about Trent earlier on, haven't we? So I'm not going to add too much on there. Cancelo, I think, has gone up a level, especially this season. Has been literally in basically every team that Pep chooses. Probably had maybe like 2 rests in the league the whole season. Such a vital player to them. The fact that he can play a left and right back has been really useful for them. So obviously there's honourable mentions to like a Robertson, even though I do put Matty Cash in there as well, just for the FPL probably there. But they'll be my 2 top picks. How does yours compare, Charlie?
Yeah, I've got the same. I think, I did slightly consider Robertson because he's got 10 assists, which, and maybe Sam can correct me if I'm wrong, but just from an outside opinion, it feels like Robertson maybe wasn't as good in the first half of the season, but the second half of the season has become much better and almost on Trent's level. But I think the reason I just give it to Cancelo is just so important to that Man City team who ended up obviously winning the title. So I think it's hard to go away from him. He completed the most passes of any player in the whole league, which obviously has a part to do with the style that Man City play. But the fact he's effectively a sort of inverted wing back, almost midfielder winger, and having that, quite commonly that a high pass completion is usually centre backs because they end up passing it between themselves. So for a player in his position to have the most passes completed of anyone in the league is quite a statement for how important it is to that team. So yeah, I've gone the same as you, Trent and Cancelo.
Yeah, make it full house, Sam, or are you going to disagree?
Yeah, no, I was going to make the case for Andy Robertson, to be fair, but I can't begrudge Cancelo getting in, so I think, fine with Trent and Cancelo.
It's going too well, this. Need some conflict. Maybe we'll get it centre half. So we'll move on to there. So back to you, Sam. Centre half suggestions, centre back.
Yeah, I've gone for Virgil van Dijk and Joel Matip. I think Van Dijk's a bit of a shoo-in. He's just the best centre half in the world. Continues to just show why he is week in, week out. I think for me, Joel Matip this season has almost been on Van Dijk's level for the whole season. 3 goals, 3 assists, 4 big chances created. Top 10 in the league for clean sheets, tackle success, clearances, duels won, and aerial battles won. And just adds a complete another dimension to Liverpool when they're playing. I think there's been a fair few other performances that have been notable. I know Diaz has had another good season at Man City when he's been fit. He's been playing really well. Rudiger for Chelsea has had a good year as well. But for me, it's Van Dijk and Matip.
How do yours compare, Charlie?
Yeah, similar. Van Dijk definitely. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's almost a given, but just the level he brings, particularly off maybe not the best of the season before, and obviously there was that injury, but I think he's got the best duels, dual percentage won for any defenders that have won. I think minimum of 100 duels. So. Yeah, I mean, there's just no getting past it. He is. I don't think there's a single attacker facing him that enjoys facing him one-on-one because he just seems so calm in those situations. The other centre back was a bit more of a choice. I've given it to Diaz, but I don't really know who I think should actually get this position. I felt like it should be a Man City player based on the clean sheets, and I think it's a bit of a toss up between Diaz and Laporte by the end of the season. And maybe it's just kind of an overall opinion about Diaz in general rather than maybe specific performances. But I just feel like he had a lot of calmness and sort of leadership to that Man City backline that isn't there without him. So I think that's probably my reasoning for going him. But I completely agree with the other shouts that Sam mentioned as well. So I wouldn't mind any of them getting in ahead of Diaz.
Okay, we're sticking on the same teams. But the two that I had picked was Matip and Laporte. Not even I got Van Dijk in there. I might be using the same kind of logic that we use with Trent for the Young Player of the Year, that we're kind of used to him being on a certain level, so we don't kind of notice it as much. But as kind of Sam touched on with Matip, you've seen how big he's been for them, especially in the league. I know he's kind of had a bit of rotation with Konate, like in the European competitions, but I think he's been very good this season, Matip. And then Laporte, I would edge over Diaz. I think Diaz, we've kind of got it in our head from last season a bit, and I think Laporte's been personally better this season compared to Diaz, and obviously played a lot more compared to Diaz in terms of the injury. So they're the two I'd be going with, but I feel like we'll probably I'll get overruled. It'll be on Van Dijk, and then it's probably on the other option that we need to decide on, I'm assuming.
I think it's probably Van Dijk and Matip based on our answers given.
I mean, I think for the case for Matip is just that more clean sheets than Diaz and Laporte, conceded less goals than Diaz and Laporte, more tackles than Diaz and Laporte, higher tackle to success. It's great. It's strange, and I can completely understand why saying that you feel like there should be a City defender in there because they ultimately won the league. But the level of performance that Matip's put in this season just goes under the radar so often, probably because he's next to Van Dijk and just makes defending look relatively easy for a majority of the season. I think there's definitely a case, like you said, Will, of sort of thinking that we just get used to Van Dijk performing at this level, so you kind of think it just is what it is, sort of thing. But the first game that he's not there for Liverpool, and it's just instantly noticeable that he's not there. I think Matip this season has been brilliant beyond the point where you can't overlook him for the second centre back spot.
I've got no issue going Van Dijk and Matip. I had Matip 1 and Laporte 2, so
cool.
That's fine. It's looking a very strong Liverpool back line here. 4 out of 5.
That's why, I'm pleased we weren't Cancelo.
Yeah, I'm definitely pleased we weren't Cancelo. There's never in doubt really that one. Where I think we'll be having a bit more fun, maybe move on to midfield. So we're trying to stick to a 4-3-3 here, but it's a bit of a struggle when you come through to this midfield 3. So I'm just trying to put it out there, guys, if we're getting to midfield, if either of you got a defensive midfielder or have we just gone all out attack?
Yeah, I've gone DM and 2 more sort of advanced midfielders.
That's what I've done as well.
I've got 2 DMs.
Okay.
One a bit more advanced.
Okay.
So they're all just central midfielders, yeah.
Yeah, throw your DMs out there first then, Sam, and then we'll talk about that DM position probably to start with.
All right, cool. So I've gone Declan Rice and, I think you class him as a DM, but Rodri.
Yep. What was yours, Charlie, in terms of a DM?
Similar, actually. So, I had Rice and Rodri as well as my DMs. I toyed with the idea of putting Rice as one of my more sort of more slightly advanced midfielders, based on the fact that he does carry the ball forward a lot for West Ham and really progresses the ball. I think, again, this is just kind of on the off occasions of seeing him. I haven't seen him across the whole season, so again, Sam can correct me. But the times I've seen Fabinho, I think he's been absolutely outstanding. The times I've actually seen him, but based on kind of some of the statistics behind it, and so for example, Rodri has the highest percentage of dribblers tackled out of these 3 kind of options. So I think I'd be giving it to Rodri, but I absolutely see both Rice well, specifically Rice, maybe as a potential for one of the other midfield positions if needed.
Yeah, so I'm very similar again. So I had Rodri as the first choice for DM, and then Rice as a backup option as a DM. I thought, we're going for the title here, we can't play with two DMs, so I can't put two DMs in there. I want to say about Rodri as well, he's come up with quite a few crucial goals. I just looked, he's had 7 goals this season, which is very good for a DM, and obviously he scored in the last day of the season, so I think, do we agree that Rodri's definitely in there then? We've all kind of mentioned him.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we lock Rodri in, and then I think if we think about the other midfield slots, we might come back to Rice, but I feel like we need to go all out attack. So we go back to you, Charlie, then. So you're saying you've got 2 other midfield spots. What kind of midfielders are you thinking for those 2 spots?
They're a bit more advanced. So I've gone KDB as one of them. I think he kind of speaks for himself, particularly the end to the season that he's had. And like I said earlier, I don't think he's been consistent necessarily enough to be, in the conversation for player of the season, for example. But I think in some games, one-off games, he's been just out of this world. Like, just some of the things he can do, I can't think of a player I've seen do before. So it is pretty ridiculous. So I think, yeah, he had to go in for me. The other one was a bit of a toss-up. So like I said earlier, I toyed with the idea of pushing Rice into there just to get him in as well. But I also wanted to give a shout out for Bernardo Silva, because I feel like, maybe the goals and assists don't catch up with some of the other potential options, but it's just his work rate. He just runs all day long. He ends up with the highest kilometres covered per 90 in the league for any player, which I think was almost 12 kilometres per 90. So yeah, I love a bit of a workhorse in the team, and I think he would be my option to go for the other midfield slot.
To you, Sam. So obviously you were saying one more attacking midfield. Do you want to discuss that kind of spot, who you had there, or any other options around that kind of midfield position?
I thought it's kind of midfield 3 for me picked itself. I think De Bruyne has to go in. I just think he's the best player in the league, to be honest. He's an unbelievable footballer. And again, this year cropped up with a lot of decisive goals, similar to Rodri. I think the Man City midfield this year really stepped up in games when you in previous seasons their front line has stepped up with the goals, but this year the midfield really chipped in with some big goals. I think the one that was the goals that stand out in the memory for me, De Bruyne's goal at Anfield was a pretty big one at 2-1, I think, to get it back to 2-2. And then obviously had a massive role to play in the run-in as well. I think he scored 4 goals in one game in the run-in, so it's hard to look past him. I can see what Charlie's saying about Bernardo. You can make a case for Bernardo. I think, in my opinion, Rice has done more this season. Maybe it's a little bit more of a recency bias towards Rice. I sort of overlook what Bernardo's done this season, and admittedly, I haven't watched too much of Man City this season. But from what I have watched, every time I've watched them, De Bruyne has been the best player on the pitch by a mile. So for me, KDB gets in my midfield.
Yeah, I think I'm also agreed on KDB, so I feel like Rodri and KDB are locked in there, and I feel like that third midfield slot's the kind of the one you could debate in the whole team that's probably the most sought after. But I guess if we go for a 4-3-3, it kind of has to be one of those two, doesn't it, in terms of Rice and mine's gone there, Bernardo. I couldn't think of what I was talking about then. I think there's so many like winger or kind of winger options. I was kind of going for a 4-2-4 when I first drafted this, but so if we're having Rice or Bernardo, would we be going more? I think if I was choosing between those, I'd be going Rice, and I think Sam's going Rice, and then Charlie would go Bernardo. Or
I'm happy going with Rice. He was in the conversation for 2 different positions in mine, so I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so we'll go for Rodri, Rice, and then KDB in the midfield 3. Good with
cool.
That?
Yeah.
So I feel like forwards, we probably just need to talk in general, because I don't know about you, but there's a striker spot that you generally have in a 4-3-3, but I'd probably just stick someone who would generally play on the wing there. unless we're going for an out-and-out striker. I don't know what you two have done in terms of that.
Yeah, I tried to go for 2 wingers and a number 9, just to try and
make it balanced. Okay, yeah, I did have a
try
striker,
and balance
but I had
it.
so many wingers to try to fit in. I was like, well, where do I put these? Shall I just put the obvious one out? Well, obvious 2 maybe. Obviously, if I start with Salah, I assume you've both got Salah, like obviously in there straight away in the wing position. And based on discussions we've had earlier, I'm going to say this. I feel like there's 3 people competing for this other wing spot. So if I throw Son, Bowen, and Saka all out there, who are my other winger selections, what are you guys saying for the other wide man?
I've got Son myself.
Okay. Who was my
Yeah,
one?
I got Son as well. I think added into that, you need to. I think you could quite viably put Jota into that question as well, based on the season. He had an unbelievable start to the season as well. But and maybe even Mane. But I think Son is undeniably in.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest positions on the pitch then. There's 2 wide men. I feel like this one in the middle might be a bit more controversial than if we're going for an actual striker. Go on, Charlie, who's your number 9?
Well, but begrudgingly, I've gone with Kane. I don't think, if we are going for an out-and-out number 9, I don't think there's a complete standout option. I think, like I say, I don't think there's many that have been amazing across the whole season, and you can see that from, like you said, the mid-season pod where we ended up going with Dennis. But the reason I've gone with Kane, I feel like I think he only scored 1 goal less than, for example, Ronaldo in terms of, and those were the 2 top scoring out number 9s. But he got 9 assists compared to Ronaldo's 3. And I think the way his role has changed, and we've seen it over a number of years now, to now provide goals for Son. I don't think Son would have as many goals as he did this season if it wasn't for Kane and the way that they link up and his kind of build-up play, particularly after a sort of quite bad start to the season, which Kane I think tends to have anyway, but also obviously off the back of all that Man City transfer saga and stuff, and having to kind of pick himself up off the back of that. I think if we're going out and out number 9, Kane would be my choice.
I feel like I have to jump in there and try to argue for one Man United player in the whole team and say that if it was going for an out-and-out striker, Ronaldo would clear for me. He's got 1 goal less, 1 goal more, but he's played 7 less games, which you kind of need to factor into that argument, I think, and he's got a better shot conversion. I think if he was in like a City or Liverpool team, he'd just be provided so many goals, and he's kind of carried that United team to a certain extent. Obviously, not to where they want to be, but I'd argue on a one-off season he's had a better season than Kane. That's what I'm arguing, to try and get a United player in there. But if I was setting up, I'd probably like stick Son or someone up front in this lineup, but I'd be going for Ronaldo over Kane. What do you think, Sam?
Well, I was going to go for Richarlison for single-handedly dragging Everton into the most humorous of situations for about 35 weeks this season. So here's to Big Rick for that. No. No, in all seriousness, I am honestly completely split with this because I can see the argument for both, and I think Kane went the first half of the season just on like the most insane drought, but you can't look past the fact that he's got 9 assists to go with his 17 goals, created 19 big chances versus Ronaldo's 7. But equally, as you quite credibly point out, Will, Ronaldo has quite literally carried Manchester United to their lowest ever points total in the Premier League. So I don't really know what to say on it, because it's just been the year of the anti number 9. It would appear, really, like it's quite crazy. But I think most teams, if they were going to set up in this kind of formation, would have one. So I wouldn't begrudge either of them, to be honest. I would probably lean maybe marginally more towards Kane just because the numbers are more than Ronaldo's. But equally, if we were to agree on Ronaldo, I don't think I'd have a problem with that. It's a tough one. It is, yeah. I think it's the one position on the team for me that didn't pick itself.
Yeah, I feel like if they played the same amount of games, it wouldn't be a competition because Ronaldo's would look better. But because he's played less games, it kind of skews it. Obviously, the assist for Kane looks good, but it is very much. I can imagine some of those Kane assists have come from these outrageous Son goals as well, where his conversion's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't
you can say that. I think
begrudge either, but I'm just saying Ronaldo would be my choice. But if I'm getting outvoted, I'm not gonna kick off.
I don't know. I don't know who to vote here.
It's not often I would be backing a Spurs player, but I do think I'd still give it to Kane. I think also the fact and yes, it is true that obviously Son's season is far better than any of the other United players relative to Ronaldo, but I think Kane has been a crucial part in the creative side that's then enabled Son to get what he's got, and then obviously ended up with Spurs getting Champions League compared to United finishing in the Europa places. So I think, yeah, for me, I would still be going Kane.
It's been a long season. We've got Charlie recommending Spurs players. We've got Sam talking about Everton players. It's coming out. It's been a long one, but yeah, I'll begrudgingly put Kane in there for you.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I feel like we can't have a team in the season with United player considering. So I think we have to go Kane.
At least we haven't got an Arsenal player in there, so that's double trouble, isn't it? So yeah, we've got a complete lineup then. We've got Alisson in goal, Trent, Matip, Van Dijk, all Liverpool there. Nice backline of Liverpool with Cancelo as the other fullback. In midfield, we've got Rodri, we've got Rice. It's kind of the holding players. Rice might be a bit box to the box. Then you've got KDB, can do whatever he wants there really. Then Salah on one side, Son on the other, and Kane in the middle. Are we happy with that, both of you?
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, not too bad. So I think that gives a good summary on what we think of the whole season in general, guys. It kind of covers everything we wanted to cover. Is there anything either of you wanted to add as a bit of a conclusion to the season, or do you think we've covered it all right?
No, all good from me.
Yeah, I think fine.
Yep, sounds good then. So I'll thank you both again, seeing as though you've got through the season. Well, we've got it through it together. This 24th episode. We might not have all turned up to all of them, but we've got through it together. And it's been. I feel like it's been a long one with all the fixture rearrangements and everything, and coming past the COVID kind of situation. So we've survived it together, shall we say? And it's been.
Yeah, indeed.
It's been a good season all the way to the final day. So. Thank you both, and thank you everyone for listening to all the pods throughout the season. We should be back, hopefully, for a bright and early August start, isn't it? Like 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier than general for next season. So hopefully everyone has a nice summer break away from FPL and a bit of relaxation just in general life away from football, because we haven't got a major tournament. So wish everyone the best for the summer, and we will see you next season. Have a great rest of your evening.